What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more Depeche Mode, and we're returning to Music for the Masses, 1987. I thought I had reacted to every song on this album, but in fact, it's not true. I had not yet reacted to Sacred. So this is a tune I remember enjoying when I was a kid. It might not have been one of my go-to tracks on the album, but I certainly did enjoy it. It's not the heaviest tune on the record, but it definitely has a bit of drama and a bit of weight to it. Certainly, there are aspects of it that speak to the title of the track, meaning there's some ethereal church choir style vocals at the beginning of the tune. There's some lines about obviously sacred and holy, being on hallowed ground. There's even a pair of lines which I think can go some different ways, but essentially it's like, when I see a beauty, I go down to my knees. Now that could be about religious or spiritual awe, but I think a reasonable reading of the lyrics might be that these passionate, psycho-emotional, and maybe physically intimate experiences, maybe with a beauty that causes you to be in awe and to, buckle at your knees. I think the idea of trying to characterize those types of experiences in words is not something easy, and you are on sacred ground where things are difficult to describe to our, let's say, terrestrial brains and our, simple languages. But again, I think there's some different ways you can read lines in this song, which is very much indicative of their larger catalog. But if I had to hypothesize, and again, this is another song where as a kid I was mostly focused on the sonics, maybe one or two lines standing out to me, but it wasn't until successive years that I began to think about it and wonder what the themes may mean. And eventually, again, my thought was, I think you could go some different ways with this. Maybe you could read it as a more overtly or traditional sacred depiction of experiences which are, transcendent. But the idea that he may be referring to lovemaking or physical passion, psycho-emotional intensity in that context, and that is sacred and difficult to put into words, I feel like is an entirely fair reading, and maybe the one that I put the most stock in. Nevertheless, it is a very compelling tune sonically. It's got a bit of energy. It's not terribly heavy, certainly less so than other tracks on the album, but it definitely, it's got a bit of drama to it, and there's a layer I would even maybe call funky. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but there's this electric metallic type of layer, and that definitely has a slightly, again, funky sort of nature to my ears and brain. In any case, let's listen to it. This is Depeche Mode. The song is Sacred, and it's from their 1987 album, Music for the Masses.
It's my duty. I'm a missionary. So here is my confession. It's an obsession. I'm a firm believer, and no of love's eternal glory. Sacred, holy, to put it in words, to write it down. That is walking on hallowed ground, but it's my duty. I'm a missionary.
You know, sonically, it's very much what I had in my head in advance. Lyrically, I don't know. Maybe it's indicative of the way, again, I think you could take a lot of their songs, and this one included, in some different ways. I'm going to contradict myself in my intro. I feel like as I listened to the lines here, it felt more straight away, more literal. Maybe not literal in terms of him actually being a missionary for a given church and, you know, looking for sacred experiences at temples or churches or, you know, observing holy relics. But the idea of, like, finding experiences in life that are transcendent, that feel like they are spiritually uplifting, and, you know, going down to his knees in sort of a reverential manner, and in that regard trying to find those aspects of life that are beyond the humdrum, beyond the terrestrial and the ordinary, and recognizing the sacred when you see it, and trying to articulate it in language, trying to write it down so that you might spread the word of that good news, so to speak. So certainly framed within more overtly religious language, and maybe it is that. Maybe it is, you know, right on the nose exactly what it sounds like. But as I listened this time, I was thinking more like finding things in life and earth and human experience, even if they're not necessarily overtly part of some religious doctrine, but which are, again, spiritually enlightening or uplifting and thus sacred and hallowed. And not so much about the idea of having this, you know, intense romantic or intimate passion being the sacred that he is pursuing. Though again, there's some lines, but, you know, like, I'm certainly one of the devout, you know, I'm a believer and a warm receiver. I still think there's ways that you can read the song running in the direction I was thinking about in advance. But on this listen, at least, I was actually thinking, like, no, you know what? I'm going to go a different way with it. And maybe, you know, I've had that in my mind, but that's not really what's happening here. Again, I think it's up for debate, and as I've learned, even with Depeche Mode, one of my favorite bands for my entire life, I don't claim to be an expert, nor do I argue that any of my interpretations are authoritative or definitive. So if you have a different take, do let me know, and certainly don't think that I'm saying that's what this song is about. In any case, again, I enjoy the sonic configuration, that funky electro-metallic layer was there. There was sort of a xylophone type of melodic run, which I didn't really remember. Also the bass. I mean, it's, you know, electric synth bass, but the pulsing quality, the pulse, pulse. I wasn't remembering that's exactly how the bass line functioned in this one. And so the overall vibe was what I remembered, but the individual ingredients, they were fresh to me on this listen, and I wasn't thinking about all of them in advance. So again, it's a top tune from an absolutely fantastic album. Do let me know what you think, and if you didn't know, it's now actually been a couple months, but yeah, 2 or 3 months ago, something like that, I did in fact, probably like 3 or 4, but I did a watch along for the documentary about Songs in Faith and Devotion, which was very illuminating to me. I had some sense of, the difficulties the band was going through at the time, but not nearly as much as that documentary made clear, and once again, thank you to Stefan for that. In any case, I will try to continue with those in the coming weeks and months, so let me know what you think here, and I will see you next time. Peace.